So I'm going to do a series of videos on hypnotism, and I am not going to show any demonstration videos of hypnotism and hypnotists. It's a very powerful demonic influence on the lives of helpless individuals who submit themselves to these occult practices. So we'll talk about the word hypnosis itself and the etymology of the word. Hypno means sleep. Osis means condition. So hypnosis is bringing about the condition of sleep. Now that should be a real clue right away, because if you have dreams, you know the condition of sleep places you in a situation of a dreamlike false reality. And that's exactly what happens. The individual comes into this condition of sleep, and the dream world is entered into by the hypnotist. Actually, the evil spirits that are under supposedly the control of the hypnotist. Well, anyhow, the word itself is being coined and starting to be used about 1842. Coined by James Braid of Manchester, England. Now, the word itself really not take on too much significance in the area of language until about 1880 and then 1900. It will start to flourish, the usage of the word. Now, part of this is due to the fact that Sigmund Freud is developing his psychoanalysis and talking about the unconscious portion of the psyche, or the soul. And about 1885, Freud will get interested in hypnosis. And Freud will be the one, along with a few others, to now try to integrate this with a false promise of healing through hypnosis. So I think the first category and the first field, or the first institution that it gets popular, is in the field of medicine. Now later, the use of hypnosis will go into other fields such as education, religion, and entertainment. Most people encounter it through the area of entertainment. And incidentally, churches are subject to inviting a hypnotist to entertain their members. Be leery of this. Schools are allowing hypnotists to come in for entertainment purposes. Under no circumstance should you or any member of your family submit to a hypnotist. Now I'll get into that in my next, I'm going to say slide, but it's not really a slide, it's a notebook. As you can see, my videos are not polished. I make goof-ups. My background just fell off the table. But I continue to talk. Now, what happens in hypnotism? Well, you've got an evil spirit that is being cast cast out and cast forward from the hypnotist to the subject. So I tried to illustrate this in my little diagram here. As you can see, this is the hypnotist who has familiar spirits, and he will release them to the subject. Now the evil spirit will enter into the area called the mind, and there is a spiritual dimension to the mind. It's in Ephesians 4:23, the spirit of the mind. So in other words, if it's not protected, these evil spirits can get into the spirit of the mind, especially if the subject is willing to be hypnotized. So what happens? The evil spirit comes into the subject, into the spirit of the mind, which is like opening the window or opening the door and saying, "Come on in." It's like there's a wild boar loose in the backyard, and someone opens the door and invites the wild boar to come into the house. Well, once the wild boar is in the house, the wild boar is going to do what a wild boar does. Act like a wild boar. So these evil spirits delight in taking control of the thoughts and the emotions and the will of the subject. Now, interestingly enough, alcohol is very similar. Have you ever wondered why they call it spirits? Because the word alcohol comes from an Arabic word about the spirit of al-kahul. So it is noticed that when people ingest a lot of alcohol, they're not really themselves at all. They do come under the influence of the spirit of al-kahul. So it's very similar, all right? Now, if you've ever been around somebody that's, quote, drunk, you'll realize you're not talking to the individual that you knew a few hours ago before they got drunk. In fact, oftentimes the individual doesn't even remember what he or she said or did. So in a sense, alcohol is very similar to hypnotism. But I think hypnotism is actually more powerful than the alcohol itself. So what happens? Well, first thing that happens is that the evil spirit causes the subject to go into a deep sleep. As you might expect, that's exactly the whole nature of hypnosis, sleep. And secondly, the evil spirit creates a false reality. In other words, it's like when you're dreaming and you're actually starting to act out some of the things in your dream while you're sleeping. This is a false reality, but nevertheless it's a reality to the individual. Then the subject responds to the false reality and forsakes reality itself. This is why a hypnotist can get maybe 20, 30 high school students on stage and have them all plucking like they're chickens. Or maybe in an air-conditioned room, they'll all told they're extremely hot and they'll all want to drink a water because it's a false reality. Now these things are very powerful and very real. So the illustration I give is something that happened to me a few years ago. when I was getting some software installed on my computer, and I didn't know what was what, and I sought technical help, and the technical individual was clean across the United States, at least 2,000 miles away, and he said, click on the link. And when he clicked on the link, when I clicked on the link, then that individual 2,000 miles away was actually controlling my computer. And when that was occurring and he was installing the software, I was just laughing because I saw the little arrow, click on this, click on that, do this, do that. And all I did was sit there and laugh. Now that's what it's like. The evil spirit takes control of the soul of the subject. Now the soul is composed of thoughts, emotions, and will. And that's why, if you've ever watched any of these demonstrations, the individual is in a sense helpless because they are remotely being controlled by the controller, which is the hypnotist, but ultimately it's not the hypnotist, it's the demonic forces that the hypnotist is controlling. At least he or she thinks he's controlling these demonic forces. But there's much more to be said on this. This is a solemn warning to any of God's people to stay away from this stuff and have nothing to do with it. And I'll get into some more biblical text and aspects to this in a future video. This is just part 1, and we'll talk a little more about it in more videos to come. Thank you for watching. End of video.